ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Justice Obscured. I am your host, Cecilia, and I'm back with another injustice issue that I feel so deeply in my core. So, June. June also has ushered in a very bittersweet moment for me. Let me explain. June is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and I recently got convicted. I felt like it's so unfair that I am championing justice, but it seems like I'm only championing women's justice. Like injustices don't happen to men. So I went on a deep dive and I started, thinking about what are men's injustices because I am honestly clueless. I couldn't fathom injustice that happens to men exclusively. And I was like, oh, I'm seriously uneducated. And so I was thinking, you know what? Let me take a moment and sit back down and finally face the monster. If you know who the monster is, you are also like me and you're in for a ride. So if you are a woman and you are a feminist or an ex-feminist or you have been in feminist spaces, we have been taught that the men's rights activists or the men's rights movement in general is anti-women, hateful towards women, misogynistic, all these words that are synonymous with propagating injustice against women is what I knew the men's rights movement upheld, which was so ironic considering I, as Cecilia, I have always held to there is no social justice movement. And social justice movements are like feminism, Black Lives Matter, all of these, including men's rights movements, they're all social justice movements. There is no social justice movement without real, genuine injustice happening. Like there could be extremes, like feminism also can have extremes, but the reality is there's usually some form of injustice that they're trying to address in society, a social injustice. Yet I never gave the men's rights movement that same benefit of doubt that they might actually be talking about real injustices that happen. So anyway, I took a deep dive, I took some time off and I started looking for what they uphold. So I went to the streets of Twitter, and when I tell you that everything that popped up, because I just went to Twitter and I searched up men's rights movement, and everything that popped up was exactly what I was taught, because everything was crazy. I found articles like men should be paid for their erection labor. I'm like, hello, what? Or articles that say things like women actually fantasize about rape. So when a man is raping a woman, he's bringing her fantasies to come through. I said, huh? This can't be the entirety of the men's rights movement. But then it hit me. I know better than this because social media and the mainstream media in general is known for bringing extremes, the loudest voices, the most controversial to the front, and never the sound people. Those ones wanakwanga uko nyuma, uko back left, So I went and I created an alias account and I said I was born in 2004, so I'm a 21-year-old, and I also put my gender as male. And when I went back to the same Twitter, everything changed when I searched up men's rights movement. A whole new world popped up, and I'm like, hello, who is this? When men are bringing up issues like, how come in mainstream media nobody talks about men's rape cases? You look for other words to not say that men have been raped. How come that stigma around men's rape cases or men's sexual abuse? Or things like, how come the family court systems is biased against fathers? How come fathers are easily disposable when it comes to the lives of their children? Oops. I said, oh, and oop. Or situations like, how come nobody's talking about the incredibly high rates of suicide among men? Ooh, I said, Your Honor, I don't know what to say. Your Honor. And I'm just like, what is happening? So I took another dive and I went into the suicide rates. And it was so heartbreaking to listen to these things. I was like, men have a really hard time. And that was so hard for me to empathize with, because when you have been taught that men are your enemy, or when you have this mindset that the men are the oppressors, it is very hard to empathize with men's issues. For example, a man would say something to me like, men do most of the hard work in society. Men are the ones in construction. They put their lives at risk daily. Um, and how come they don't get any kind of acknowledgement for that? And I'd be like, who set up that system? Hmm? Si ni mwanawe tu. Nani aliambia wanaume wanafaa fanya kazi ngumu? It's their biology. They should bring them up with biology. And I'm like, just because it's biological doesn't mean they don't deserve empathy for the work they do. Doesn't mean they don't deserve recognition and support. They're not saying they want to not do the work. They're saying acknowledge it's hard and support me through it. And I was like, ouch, that feels painful. Or something else I would say was, somebody would say, men's suicide rate is through the roof. And I'd be like, well, women have more attempted suicides. Ufala. So women try to die and fail. Now we need to, they have become the real victims because they try to die and fail. Not that I am minimizing attempted suicides as well, because any that to get to that place is quite detrimental. But how come we don't give the same support and acknowledgement to men that we give to women? How come, as a society, we have made it seem like men should suffer on their own and women are the true victims? We might not say it like that, but we say it in our actions. Because take a look at statistics about domestic violence. There is, in every county, there's a domestic violence shelter, either sponsored by the government or sponsored by an NGO somewhere. There's always a rescue center for women to escape, or women have access. Not in all places, we can acknowledge that not in all places, but women have access to domestic shelters where they can escape if they are in violent homes. What if the vice versa was happening? Because statistically, it has been proven, and this was so hard for me to face, that in most domestic violence, especially intimate partner violences, women initiate the violence. Unampiga kofi na unampesa unipige. It's not funny, but I can most definitely see that happening. So in situations where there's domestic violence, how come we tell men just walk away? We try and make it seem like it's okay for a man to somewhat take the violence and not call it for what it is, violence. So what happens if a man is in a domestic violence situation? We shame him. We make him feel like he's weak. We make him feel less of a man because he has chosen not to strike back, not to hit back. That is so unfortunate. So unfortunate. I read a tweet this morning. Somebody said somebody was retreating to something. Somebody said, "How come men don't want to be vulnerable with their situations? You want me to guess that you're going through a hard time? Tell me so that I could be in it." And then somebody retweeted. A man retweeted and said, learning about men's vulnerabilities is like spiritual porn to women. They want to know it. They get high off of knowing that you're human and that you have weaknesses, but they never want to take the responsibility of helping you carry the weight of it. And that hit me hard. It hit me really hard because I was like, oh no, it's true. I want to know your weaknesses. I want to know all of these things, but I don't want to help you through it. Boss, Babana! And that's so wrong. That kind of mindset actively contributes to why men suffer mentally. Because not only are they suffering through a system that has told them men have to be tough and that showing vulnerability is weakness, but then you also have women who are naturally equipped to be more nurturing, to be more emotionally receptive, as the ones who are pushing them away and saying, fix it yourself, do it for yourself. So where are they supposed to go? Because to other men, that's weakness and that's not acceptable there. And then to women, it's also not acceptable. Where does such a person go? They end up dead. And it's very unfortunate. I know I've kept saying unfortunate because that's how I feel about this whole situation. When I was looking into what the men's rights activists were bringing forth, I was like, huh? The statistics they were bringing, I was like, I have never had of such a thing a day in my life, because I have never thought about domestic violence and thought a man might go through domestic violence. I have never gone through domestic violence situations and thought, was are women also aggressors? Because we think there's no aggression towards men from women. Why do we think like that? Why do we think that men are inherently violent and women are inherently averse to violence? That's a wrong way of thinking about it. And the men's rights activists would say things like, violence, trying to stop violence against women is a good thing. It's a noble thing even. But when you only focus on one gender and allow this to be perpetrated to another gender, you are not stopping the violence. You are creating a cycle that will never end, because hurt people hurt other people. So I kept studying, and I kept looking at different articles, different schools of thought, different mindsets, different everything. And the only thing I kept hearing from the men, because I was like, okay, these are the problems. What are some of the solutions? Now, some solutions are more complex, like when the law is biased against a particular gender, that's unfair, that's wrong, that's injustice. That's what we're here to talk about at Justice Obscured. Because how come fathers are ultimately just disadvantaged in family court? We understand that yes, mothers have a more nurturing responsibility with their children, but fathers are also greatly required in their children's lives. So how come we feel like it's okay for fathers to be visitors, that they come once or twice in a year, or in a month, and think this child won't have father wounds? Because we're talking about father wounds and absent fathers, when in situations where, okay, there's, let me explain. There's two things here. There's the man who doesn't want to be in his children's lives, and he leaves his children and his wife, or is his significant other. He's a completely different case. What we're talking about here, the injustice we're talking about here, is the man who actually wants to be a father, the man who actually wants to be in his children's lives, but is disadvantaged, maybe because his wife is using the children as revenge. That hit home, because that is something I have thought about before, and I'm so ashamed to admit it. Or beyond that, I learned there's something called paternity fraud. So there's a difference between me. I go out at one time. I'm drinking. I'm lit, and within the same time frame, I have multiple sexual partners. So let's say in 3 days I've had sex with three different people, and then I find out I'm pregnant, and then I named the wrong guy. I say it's this guy when it's actually not that guy. That's innocent. That's not a problem. It is situations where you specifically know that man is not the father. He is not the father. But you say, because he's better off financially, he'll be able to provide, he's most emotionally stable, I will lie. And I'll deliberately tell him he is my father's child. That is wrong. Why do we think that's okay to do to other people? Because the day they find out, I was listening to this man express that pain, because he turned into a men's rights activist after that, because his child went into septic shock, and the child had an injury, and they asked him to donate blood, and he wasn't a match. And he was like, huh? And then he was told, you need to do a paternity test. He did a paternity test and finds out the child is not his. The emotional anguish that he went through was different, because now not only does he have to process that this is my child, but he also has to grapple with the fact that I still love this child. I can't just leave. That's mine. Like, me not nimemchunga, me not nimemlea. No, where do I go? And then how do I make this child suffer the consequences of the mother? I was I was saddened by such situations. I think I particularly am saddened by fathers' injustices, because I am very big on family. One thing that I want to be more than anything in this life is to be a mother. And because I want to be a mother, of course, I understand. When I say that, people always go like, "Oh, do you know what it means to be a mother?" Shut up. I totally understand what it is. I'm not glamorizing it. I'm saying this is what I want. And because that's how I think, and I think in terms of family, the man who I'm going to be with and father the children that I want has to be present, and he has to be he has to want to be a father. So I can't imagine other people taking advantage of men who want to be fathers. And it really hurt my feelings. Anyway, beyond father fraud or paternity fraud or things like that, I went on another deep dive of men's mental health issues, and it's severe loneliness. I was like, that is so saddening because as women, we are made to believe that men have okonambogi, men are never truly alone. All of these things, and I'm just like, how do I, how do we go about it? And one of the things that the MRAs kept saying, MRA being men's rights activists, they kept saying is, we're not asking for an easy way out. We're asking to be supported. We're not asking to leave our families. We're not asking to not be providers. We're not asking for any of that. We're not asking, it's not when they're bringing up these issues, it's not as an escape of what is masculine. It's, they're saying, I need support. I need a support system that is strong, that is anchoring, that is empathetic, that it can comfort me without making it a public spectacle. I felt so sad because all this whole time, when men bring up the fact that they work in hard conditions, that they want to go to war, or that the more disposable gender, I thought wanasema hivyo ndio wahepe kazi yao. Wanataka waseme, oh, wacha wanawake waingie military ndio mkufe wote. I thought it was them escaping their roles, but no, it's them saying, affirm me in my role, support me in my role, and love me enough to be able to cover me, protect me from outside influence, and just be an anchor. That's all they ask for. And for the discrepancies in the law, they're saying, not all men want to abandon their children. Give me at least a fighting chance. Just because I fell out with my significant other doesn't mean I don't want to be a father. Please consider that they're worthy fathers who should be given joint custody. Chana na the abusive man, chana na the one who wants to leave his children. I'm talking about the ones who actually want to be fathers. When I went down this journey of looking into the men's rights movement, I expected to find the enemy. I expected to find this raging, misogynistic, toxic masculinity thing. But at the end of it, and I've not even gotten to the end, but as where I stand today, I realize that the enemy is me. The enemy is me for kunyimana empathy. The enemy is me for not noticing loneliness in my male friends, in my brothers. The enemy is me for not noticing and supporting things, or just giving an applause, or even just noticing unafanya kazi poa, unafanya kitu poa, unajituma vizuri, kama nikupitie hivi home uchukue lunch, najua leo umekuwa wera mbaya, nimepika food, kama uchukue, ndio usiende home tena uanze kufikiria chakula. Such simple things is what they're asking for. Nimekuwekea maji pale ya ice cubes. Umekuwa kwa jua the whole day. Kuna maji pale iko na ice cubes, boss. Tulia. That's all that's simple things like that. Alleviate people's burden. You affirm them, you support them, you make their load easier by just making food. The enemy is me, and I'm working towards changing it. I didn't like what I saw in the mirror. Because every time I was hearing these conversations, a part of me was going into defense mode. Ilya, but women, and I had to get to a place where I had to be like, leave women out of it. Talk, listen. I just want you to listen to what I'm saying. It was hard, but I'm willing and I'm ready to do the work. Are you? Are you? That's today's episode. I hope it was as convicting to you as it was for me. And I hope you could work at helping, supporting, and alleviating men's burden, especially the men in your immediate circle. I love you. Have a wonderful day. Bye.